I've had a lot of crazy moments in trial, but one that stands out is when I've represented a client who was charged with murder, or actually he was charged with what's called aggravated murder, which under Virginia law calls for a mandatory jail sentence of life imprisonment if you're found guilty. The allegations were that he hired a hitman to kill his then fiancée. The hitman had a long criminal record, was serving a life sentence for an attempted murder, and in this particular case, the prosecutor cut a deal with the hitman to testify against my client to say that yes, my client hired him to kill the fiance. So me and my team knew that our whole case depended on my cross-examination of that hitman. So I remember that when he was called to the stand, he refused to initially come out and testify until he got a better deal from the prosecutor. That took about an hour. They gave him a better deal. He came out and testified. He was a very big, imposing guy. This is a guy who by that point had been in prison for several decades, again, serving a life sentence. He had studied up on the law. He had become proficient on writing legal pleadings for other prisoners. He was a very intelligent guy. For several hours that day, it was just he and I going back and forth. I was cross-examining him, and I didn't know what to expect from him other than he wasn't going to be an easy person to cross-examine. My plan going in there was not to break eye contact with him. This was a guy that lived by the rules of the street, and so I knew that by just staring at him and not breaking eye contact with him, it was going to become personal between the both of us. And what I was hoping for is that he wouldn't really be listening to what I was asking him or trying to figure out how I was setting him up. So before I started cross-examining him, I asked the judge if I could have permission and actually step just a few feet away from him as I cross-examined him. And I just remember it was a packed courtroom, and I just remember how quiet it got when the cross-examination started, because without being a lawyer, I think everyone in that courtroom, the jury, the spectators, knew that our whole case depended on my cross-examination of a killer, a guy who admitted to killing someone, a guy who had a violent history, a guy who was admitting to being a hitman. And fortunately for my client, it went well, and the jury returned a not guilty verdict in less than an hour.